Welcome to World at Work TV. I'm Allison Avalos, and I'm joined today by Mark Donnolo of SalesGlobe to talk about selecting high-impact performance measures for your sales comp plan. Mark, how does an organization determine which measures are appropriate for the sales comp plan versus your performance management plan, or perhaps should just be simply part of the core expectations of a job?
Well, I think in general, there are too many measures to pick from. Most companies, I think they suffer from complexity. So because we can design complex plans and we can create remote control devices for the organization, we try to do that. And so we simply have too much in the plan. So I think your question is right on in that you've got to cull down what's going to be really important for the incentive plan versus other uses. What we try to do is start with the strategy of the business and use what we call C-level goals. So we're trying to cascade down what's important for the business to what's important for that job. And the job really is the platform for the incentive compensation plan and for the measures. So what you want to ask as you look at the job itself is what's important to pay for versus what's important to manage to. We really want to get down to about 3 or fewer measures if possible, which sounds simple, but it's very, very hard for organizations to do that. So we believe there's a role for management as well as a role for the compensation plan. So the pay for question is what is essential in terms of business results. And if we look at the different types of categories of performance measures, we think about financial measures, strategic measures, and then you start getting into things like milestones and MBOs. You want to try to start to stay at the top, your financial measures and your strategic measures. Those are usually the ones that end up in the sales compensation plan. The activities or the inputs to getting to those are where we're going to end up with for performance management, because there is a role for management. And core expectations for the job will also be according to many other measures, but we really want to get down to those 3 that are going to show up in the sales compensation plan that are critical for that job.
Okay, so you've talked about that ideal number, that target being about 3. How does an organization determine which 3 measures will have the greatest impact?
Well, I think it's the 3 that are going to make the most impact for the business. So we think about C-level goals. What we're trying to do is find out from a business perspective, from a company perspective, what's important to accomplish financially, what's important to accomplish from a product standpoint, from a customer standpoint, and then also from an organizational or talent standpoint. So as it pertains to the job itself, we're probably going to come down to categories that are financially related. So is it going to be something to do with volume like revenue, profit, units? Is it going to be something to do with product? So do we want to sell a certain product mix or service mix? Is it going to be something to do with the type of customer that we're selling to? Certain types of customers we may prefer over others. So the way to get to it is to say what's absolutely essential for that job, and if we don't measure that in the incentive plan, are we going to see a decline in results? So we'll usually use a technique about removing, or in the absence of that measure, what would happen. And if we're not going to see a significant result in the absence of that measure, we take it away and we move that off to the managers to handle.
Are there any common pitfalls you see organizations falling into when they're selecting their measures?
Well, I think the first one is complexity. So we're trying to do too many things with the plan. The second one is really around abundance and significance. So abundance meaning we've got too many. We talked about having 3 or fewer measures, quite hard to do. Its significance would say that you don't want any less than 20% of the weight of the incentive on any one measure. So we see a lot of plans where they've got 5%, 3%, 7% on a performance measure. So they're basically trying to buy space, like advertising space within the compensation plan, and it's not enough. So significance is a big mistake that companies will make in terms of not having enough on the plan on each measure. If you think about a measure that has less than 20% on it, and then you break that out by being paid, say, monthly or quarterly. It breaks that 20% into either 4 or 12, and then you take taxes out of that. So you've got very, very little in the plan. So what people end up doing, I think one of the pitfalls is creating what we think of as a buffet plan. So you've got all these things to select from as a rep, and I'm looking around and I'm going, well, I don't like the roast beef, I'm going to pick the green Jell-O, so I'm kind of picking and choosing. At its essence, the compensation plan, the performance measures are really a communication tool. So it'd be a lot simpler to just pay on base salary, because we could just have a lot less to deal with in terms of administration. But because we want to get a message across, we want to make that simple and have significance in that message. And then probably the final point is what we think of as nesting. So a company will say, well, we only have 2 or 3 measures in the plan, But when you look below those measures, there are other measures nested within those, kind of like those little Russian dolls that you put together or take apart. So that creates complexity because on the surface, we try to feign ourselves into the idea that we actually have a simple plan, but we don't.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
For World at Work TV, I'm Allison Avalos.